Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Anime Over Analyst here, and today is going to be my part 3 review of Made in Abyss. So, yes, this is volume 3, and this one is amazing. Just gonna say it off right off the bat. This might be one of my most favorite volumes of the entire series. It's way up there. So there's a lot to unpack, so let's just get right on into it. As you can see, it's got this really nice kind of blue color palette cover page, which is just gorgeous. You get to see Reg with Nanachi. And then on the back, we also have Rico, and it looks like the back of I'm blinking on her name, Midi. So we started off kind of at the where we last left off with Ozen having beaten the crap out of Reg. Basically, Ozen's like, you guys kind of need to train, so they kind of do like a kind of mini training arc. Basically, she's kind of testing to see if Reg can protect Rico, because the one issue with his incinerator, which I mentioned in the previous part, is that the incinerator puts him to sleep. It's a one-time use. So after that, he gets knocked out for 2 hours. And that's a serious, big, huge side effect, because then no one's able to protect Rico after, he goes knocked out. So he's got to make that one shot count. And I love that. I love that as a power system, because it's got a huge upside, but it's also got a pretty nasty downside too, to balance it out. And I love that. It's so good. So they go on this kind of little mission where they try to survive for, I believe it is 10 days out on their own. And basically, Ozen's like, if you leave this area, I won't let you proceed any further type deal. And so they did manage to stay within this area for 10 days. And at first they they might have been a little bit on the wishy-washy side, but finally they pretty much began to realize that it's impossible to try and fix either Reg's or Rico's weaknesses. And Rico's weakness is just her physical capabilities. She doesn't have the strength to really proceed. I mean, she's very limited in the fact that she's in the form of a small child girl. Small girl. Like, she's able to do amazing stunts for like a 10-12-year-old, but keep in mind, she's 10-12 years old. And Reg, on the other hand, he's physically strong, but he has no mental willpower. I won't say no. He hesitates a lot. And you will see that coming up here later on, because that is a huge issue that he deals with. He hesitates a lot. They do manage to survive the 10 or so days, and Ozen's like, okay, you guys can proceed. So they do, and they leave Marluke behind, and Marluke, she tries to convince Reg and Rico to stay, but obviously they don't. They proceed onward, and they start descending down the third layer. And the third layer really isn't much to talk about. In the anime, I think they expanded the third layer a little bit, but basically the third layer is just a straight drop. That's all it is. It's just a straight drop. They're able to navigate through some tunnels, and then that's about it. They make it to the fourth layer, and in the fourth layer, they come across the Orb Piercer, this creature here. And what I love about this creature is kind of the its design. I'll get into the Sensory organ when I get to Nanachi, but the whole situation was Reg is trying to defend Rieko because they both can't go up against it, and they realize that the orb piercer, they can almost foresee into the future, and that's insane. Like, there's times when Reg's trying to attack it and it dodges out of the way. In fact, at one point it kicks away a pickaxe that Ozen gave Rieko, as if knowing that that's what they wanted to go for. And then eventually what happens is that it shoots off a huge shower of bristles, and Reg manages to block most of them except for one. And that's insane, because these orb piercers turned out to be poisonous, of course. And immediately what happens is that Reg takes Rieko and sends her up a little bit, like maybe 5-10 feet up, out of the way of the orb piercer, because they're on these kind of like lily pad things where the orb piercers, it's kind of like individual ponds. And so he goes up on top of another lily pad away from the orb piercer, and that inflicts the curse. And Rieko starts hallucinating. She starts bleeding out of everywhere. And when I say she bleeds out of everywhere, she bleeds out of everywhere. It's really gruesome in the manga. Like, in the anime, it's really hard to watch. In the manga, it's even harder to read. Like, it's incredibly difficult to read through that because of just how gory and how much pain Rieko goes through, because she just happens to have to ascend 10-15 feet. Like, it's that the curse is that bad. Even when she's in so much pain, she tries to convince Reg to cut her arm off, because as you had saw, the poison got struck her in the hand, so her entire hand and forearm swelled up, and so she was like, "Hey, cut it off at the elbow," and Reg fails miserably. Like, it is not good, and she passes out, and that's when Nanachi comes in, our good old friend Nanachi, and she's like, "Hey, okay, I pity you, Reg. I see you're trying to take care of her. Here, this is what you need to do." He's like, "First, you need to blow air into her," and he goes immediately, starts performing CPR, like, without hesitation. Like, this is him, character development right off the bat. Like, you know how I said in the beginning he hesitates? Here, he realized he hesitated long enough for her to Rieko to get impaled. So now he's not hesitating anymore. He's like, "I'm gonna listen to Nanachi. She's my only hope. We're going straight into this." And so he starts performing CPR, and eventually Nanachi takes Reg to her own little hideout, where she's able to find she knows a cure for the orb piercer, and that happens to be her little creature pet here. And boy, is this art gruesome. Like, the art in this volume is amazing. I love the art so much. It's so crisp. It's so, like, it's clear, and you can really get what the mangaka here, Akihito Tsukushi, is really trying to portray. You know, this disgusting creature, and it's this creature that saves Riko's life, because the creature cannot die. He cannot die to anything. So Nanachi takes some blood from the creature and injects it into Rieko, and that blood is able to fight off the poison. There's a bit of anime logic into that. However, if you're like, "That thing's not even human," we'll get there. While Rieko is out, Reg does some errands for Nanachi, and there's a couple cute moments where, like, Nanachi is, trying to make dinner, and Nanaji can't cook to save her life. Her food is awful. So Reg's like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna try to cook dinner. And then he realizes he can't cook either. And so they're both tasting really bad food because throughout the entire trip, it was Rico who was making the food. So I just find that really humorous. So there is a point where we get hinted at that there is somehow a connection between Reg and Liza, Rico's mother. And we get that in this kind of weird memory flashback. Basically, Reg is going out and looking at some graves. And he suddenly just kind of gets transported into like this kind of like weird petal field, and you see a pickaxe there, the Blaze Reaper, and this was Liza's Blaze Reaper, Rico's mother's. And he's kind of sitting there like, why am I seeing this? Why am I remembering this? And this mysterious voice, who I'm saying is Liza because it's Liza's pickaxe. Even up to this day, it's not fully confirmed what his connection is to Liza, but there is a connection to Liza. And so it's pretty much referenced here, but he gets this kind of pendant here, which I completely forgot about, not having read this till about last night. And he's kind of like, what's with this pendant? And then Nanaji wakes him up and he realizes that the pendant is missing. That's just kind of a cool little like nod. It's like, what is this pendant? Why does Reg have these weird like flashbacks? Why does he have amnesia? And like I said, this is still questions that I'm still asking today, even having caught up. And we find out that way later, like around volume 8, volume 9, Reg's history gets really more intense. But I won't go into that part. Just something to do with a good old princess. What happens next is that Reg and Nanaji basically have this conversation where Nanaji describes the curse to Reg, because Reg doesn't feel the curse, he's a robot. The best illustration of this curse is honestly this picture here, where it's like the curse is, sorry for that. The curse is like a blanket, and she even pulls out a blanket to show. And the curse is like the blanket having spikes underneath it. So it's easy to descend because you're not going to get impaled by the spikes. But the second you try to ascend, try to go up, you're going to get impaled by spikes. And, these spikes are metaphorical and they mean different things. Think of the spikes as the various curses. So that's why when Reg picked up Rico and brought her up like just 5-10 feet, that's why Rico just started bleeding out of everywhere. That's a very cool, just really cool and really simple explanation of the curse. I like that because really, the further you down, the more layers is really piled on top of you. Kind of like, when you're trying to descend into the ocean and you get like 2, 3, 4 times atmospheric pressure, even more the further down you go. I just love that concept and it makes so much sense. Anyways, Reg finally goes back and faces off against the Orb Piercer again. He fights it and clings on to that organ that I was talking about. That organ is a sensory organ. It can detect shifts within the force field, and pretty much every single creature from here on out will have this type of sensory organ. And it allows these creatures to kind of foresee the future a little bit, which is insane. So that's why this creature was able to kick that pickaxe away, or the Blaze Reaper. It was why, it was so easily able to dodge Reg's attacks earlier. But basically, what Reg does is he blasts the creature, and as you can see, the creature kind of dodges it. It goes underneath the blast, which you'd think would be super bad for Reg, except that, like, 80% of those piercers got incinerated. So the creature is it's not going to fight anymore. It's pretty much like defeated. It's not dead. And I like that. I really like that concept because it really shows that you don't have to kill everything to defeat it, but it also shows like how tough it is to proceed in the abyss. Like, the creatures are so tough that you just can't kill them. They're the top of the food chain. Humans are no longer the top of the food chain here in the abyss, and that's so cool. That is so cool. Once Reg does that whole blasty bit, Nanachi goes and asks him to kill Mitty, which is a very dark thing to ask someone, honestly. Is like, hey, I need you to kill my best friend. And you're kind of sitting there like, best friend, pet? Like, what is Mitty to you? We go into Nanachi's flashback. Nanachi was an orphan raised in the middle of nowhere, somewhere up in the Arctic North. You get one of the White Whistles, Bone Druid, to come, and he basically took all these kids and, dragged them into the abyss. One of the kids was, of course, Nanachi, and the other was Mitty, who was a girl in regular form. And Nanachi and Mitty soon became very, very close friends. And, we got, Mitty, who is very spry. She's very, very much like Riko in the way that she's kind of dumb, but she's very energetic. Nanachi and Mitty formed this really close friendship. Bone Druid's been doing experiments on these kids. Basically, what he's doing is he's trying to figure out how to endure the 5th layer curse. I believe it's the 6th layer. It might be the 6th layer. Now that I think about it, I think it's the 6th layer. Because the 6th layer is the one where you lose humanity. And you lose your life or you lose humanity. He puts Mitty in one of these, elevators. And then he captures Nanachi and puts her in another one. And basically what he's going to do is he's going to lower both elevators to the 6th layer. Then he's going to transfer the curse into one of the elevators while the other one, it remains curse-free, because for some reason he can do that. Probably something to do with the force field and how he figured out the force field. How he's able to do that is just, we're gonna just say magic, like pseudoscience here, because it's never really explained how he was able to do that transfer. Anyways, he lowers both of these kids down and then immediately sends them back up. And Mitty was the one chosen to inflict all those curses on. And he literally tells her, he goes, Mitty, please stay alive, because if you die, the curse will get to Nanachi before she finishes ascending. I'm like, holy crap, this dude is evil. Like, he's so heartless. He was like, yeah, just don't die. Be a good girl and don't die on me. And so what happens is that Mitty undergoes through some intense pain. And I'm not going to show it because it is gruesome. It is nasty. Like, if you've seen the anime, this volume pretty much is the last volume that the anime ends on. It ends on the last chapter. And then the movie goes on to the next volume with Bone Druid. Basically, Bone Druid performs this curse. Mitty transforms into that just disgusting monster, globular monster. And Nanachi turns from a human into this kind of rabbit form. And the rabbit form is what's called a hollow. And hollows, they're not really explained very much in this volume. Like, they're explained a little bit, but they're explained a whole lot more later on, so I'm not going to go too far in depth on what a hollow is. Basically, it's just someone who's had their souls kind of altered. That's kind of the best way to explain it. The reason why Nanachi asks Reg to kill Mitty is because Mitty's soul is still trapped in this life form. However, the creature still can't talk. It doesn't have any cognition whatsoever. However, it still feels pain, and it still feels torment. It still cries whenever it gets hurt, and that hurts Nanachi emotionally because Nanachi, is so attached to her best friend. She literally was talking in her flashback, she was saying that the reason why she wanted to go into the abyss was to find treasure. Well, literally, as they were ascending up in that elevator, she's like, I found my treasure. My treasure is you, Mitty. Which is so adorable. It's so precious. It reminds me a little bit of One Piece, too, a little bit. Because One Piece, early One Piece, is like that. Where the treasure isn't like physical things. It's more of like the value you put into something else. So I really love that aspect. And so Nanachi does manage to escape Bone Druid, and she establishes her hut, and she takes raiders, and she does like experiments on these raiders, trying to find ways to kill Mitty. And they fail, so she ends up killing these raiders too, which is just so gruesome, and it's something that's kind of touched on a little bit, but not very much. In the end, the last chapter of the volume, Reg does go forward to kill Mitty, and he's going to do it with the incinerator. And the reason why he can do it with the incinerator is because there's this rumor that there's a tool that can erase things. I think it was even unwrite things, and then all that leaves is like fiery air, which is pretty much what the incinerator does. It just destroys everything. And before he does it, the one thing that Reg asks Nanachi is for Nanachi to continue on. And Nanachi's like, yeah, sure. I still gotta take care of Riko. And he's like, no, don't commit suicide even after Riko is healed. And Nanachi's like, damn it. You got me. There's this whole heartwarming ending where Nanachi says her goodbyes to Mitty, and Reg incinerates it. And the very last chapter is Bone Druid going, so you did manage to destroy Mitty. Congratulations, Nanachi. Well done. And that's the end of that chapter. So basically, somehow Bone Druid has been able to keep tabs on Nanachi. And I know why, but I'm not going to say why now. But we'll just say that he knows what Nanachi has been up to. You'd think that he'd let her escape that easily. Like, no. So, it's a fantastic volume. I love that one so much. It's probably one that I'm going to constantly reread because there's just so much packed into it. There's so much darkness in this volume. You really get to start to see the dark aspects of the Abyss. The first two volumes are kind of lighthearted. They're like, okay, there's stuff going on, but we can deal with it. It's almost like a little children's adventure where, like, they go into fights, but no one gets hurt. No. Riko gets hurt so bad to the point where she almost loses a limb, and she may not have full use of that limb ever again. Reg has to freaking blow up what was once a human. There were kids being experimented on by this White Whistle. And literally, there was a point where some dude was asking Bone Druid, he's like, isn't this kind of unethical? And he's like, oh, I don't see them as humans. And that just blew my mind. He doesn't even look at the kids as humans. They're just test subjects to him. He has no emotional attachment to them. And That's crazy. That's so insane that he has no attachments to these living thinking beings. So I love that. I love that a lot. Just the whole darkness aspect, and it's so good. And so yeah, I definitely recommend reading Made in Abyss if you haven't. I love this series. So that's going to be it for this review. This has been the 3rd volume of Made in Abyss. So yeah, I'm the Anime Overanalyst, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.